Hello everyone, welcome to the Lighthouse Church Sermon Broadcast. The title of today's message is Stronger Together. I start with some wisdom from Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verses 9 and 10. I'll read all texts from the New International Version. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either one of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Today, many people have put their faith in Jesus, but they are still facing significant struggles of some sort. And some of them are struggling on their own. They're like that person described in Ecclesiastes, who has fallen down and has no one to help them up. They need someone to come alongside them, to encourage them, to help them, to disciple them through their challenges. You may be one of those people. You may be sitting near one of them. You may know one of them in your home. In some church circles, people don't like to admit that they are struggling in some way. They think that spiritual people should always be victorious. So they don't want to admit their struggle. So they struggle in secret. They struggle alone. But even the Apostle Paul struggled. Even the Apostle Paul felt abandoned. Listen to these words from one of his letters, 2 Timothy chapter 4 from verse 9. Do your best to come to me quickly. For Demas, because he loved this world, has deserted me and has gone to Thessalonica. Crescens has gone to Galatia and Titus to Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me. Get Mark and bring him with you, because he is helpful to me in my ministry. I sent Tychicus to Ephesus. When you come, bring the cloak that I left with Carpus at Troas, and my scrolls, especially the parchments. Jump to verse 16. At my first defense, no one came to my support, but everyone deserted me. May it not be held against them. Here we see Paul feeling isolated and unsupported. One man had deserted him to pursue personal gain. Two others had left in order to minister in other places. One man remained, but he seemed unable to give Paul the support that he needed in his situation. When Paul stood trial, no one came to defend him. He stood there alone. Let's stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever felt a bit like this? Have you perhaps struggled with something and felt alone in your struggle? Have you needed help, but no one came to help? Perhaps you even feel like that right now. Today, I want to ask all of us two questions for those times when we find ourselves or we find others struggling alone. The first question is, will you seek help? And the second is, will you make yourself available to help others? So firstly, will you seek help? In his letter to Timothy, Paul asked him for help. He asked if Timothy and Mark would come and be with him in his time of need. He also asked for practical help, to bring his cloak and his scrolls. Now, will you seek help may seem to be a silly question to you, but it's not. Sometimes we don't seek help. We need to understand that people around us often don't know, they don't realize that we need help. Or maybe they have an idea that we need help, but they don't know how they can help. Let's not assume that those people don't care. Perhaps they just don't know because we didn't ask. Let's not be too proud to ask them. Now, when we talk about asking for help, there's great wisdom in asking the right person or the right people for help. Paul asked Timothy because he had a strong relationship with him. They were partners in the gospel. If you have a good relationship with someone, you can be vulnerable with them. You can share your feelings, like Paul sharing his feelings about feeling deserted and abandoned. You can also share your practical needs, knowing that that person does care and they will do what they can. This shows us just how important healthy relationships are. We need to build healthy relationships. We need close friends and partners in mission. These people are the ones who we can call on when we find ourselves struggling. So friends, let's not be Lone Ranger Christians who try and just get through it on our own. So our first question is, will you seek help? And its related question is, will you build some healthy relationships with fellow disciples so that you will have somebody to ask? The second big question is, will you make yourself available to help? Because sometimes we need help, other times we are able to help. Listen to John chapter 13, verse 34 and 35, words of Jesus. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. So Jesus commands his disciples to love one another as he loves us. He says that our love for one another shows those people around us that we are his disciples. In other words, our love is noticeable. Our love can be observed from our behavior towards one another. People can see how we love one another practically. Jesus later made it clearer what he meant by loving as he loved. John chapter 15, verses 12 and 13. My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Jesus' style of love is sacrificial. So if I love you like Jesus, then I'm prepared to go out of my way for your good. I'm prepared to make some personal sacrifices for your good. Now, this doesn't mean that you and I must say yes to everything that anyone asks of us. If you read through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you'll soon see that Jesus did not give his disciples everything that their hearts desired. In fact, he called them to make sacrifices for them. He called them to live sacrificial lives. He laid down his life for them, but for their salvation, not for their comfort. He disciplined them into maturity as disciples. Again, when we consider these things, we can see why healthy relationships are so important. We need to have strong enough relationships to both be there for one another and also to challenge each other when we can see something that's out of line with Jesus' words and ways. Let me give you a practical example to illustrate what I mean. Imagine that you've just been robbed. You call me, oh no, this is what happened. And I come to see you. I change my plans so that I can spend some time with you, to be with you in this time of crisis. I want to help you to get through this. So I spend time with you and I listen to you, I pray with you. And then anger flares up inside of you and you ask me to help you to take revenge against this person. Now, as a good brother, I must remind you that this is not the way that Jesus taught. Instead of plotting revenge with you, I help you to compile a statement for the police. I try to find a way to help you, a godly way to help you, a way to help you to navigate this difficult place that you're in. Now, if we don't have a strong relationship, your anger could quickly turn on me for not helping me to help you with your planned revenge. And you can say, you just don't care, and what's wrong with you? What kind of friend are you? You won't help me to sort this out. But if we do have a strong relationship, then you will know that I really do care. And I want what is best for you. So you'll allow me to help you to find a better way forward. Let's go back again to the scriptures. Jesus taught his disciples to walk together. Literally. Let's read Mark chapter 6 and verse 7. Calling the 12 to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over impure spirits. Luke chapter 10 and verse 1. After this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place where he was about to go. He sent them out 2 by 2. They did this together. When we look through Paul's letters in the New Testament, we see that the Thessalonian church was a model of walking together. Listen to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 11. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. Now, this was a church that was experiencing severe trials and persecution. Their strong relationships helped them to get through their trials. They helped one another to get through these difficulties. So we read in the second letter, 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. We ought always to thank God for you, brothers and sisters, and rightly so, because your faith is growing more and more, and the love all of you have for one another is increasing. Therefore, among God's churches, we boast about your perseverance and faith in all the persecutions and trials you are enduring. They were in it together. They helped one another. They were stronger together. So, how do we respond to this practically? I would suggest we need to do 3 things. Firstly, we need to make a decision that we will humbly seek help in our times of trouble. A decision that we will humbly seek help in our times of trouble. Secondly, we need to make another decision that we will seek to help others in their times of trouble. And thirdly, that we will build some strong relationships with fellow disciples of Christ so that we can do both of these things, so that we have strong relationships that enable us to ask for help and to give help. The first 2 decisions, I think, are pretty easy to make. But building relationships can be harder, particularly for some of us. But friends, we need to do this if we're going to get the other 2 things right. If we're going to be able to ask for help and receive the help that we need, if we're going to be able to give help to others in need, we need these strong relationships. Now, reality check. We can't be close friends with everyone. I can't be friends with the whole congregation even. You know, Jesus built strong relationships with 12 disciples. Those 12 were the ones who he asked to come and join him as he agonized in the Garden of Gethsemane over his coming crucifixion. So Jesus built especially strong relationships with a group of 12 men. Now, you and I may not have the capacity to build strong relationships with that many people. Perhaps we can only build strong relationships with a few people. That's okay. But we must build those few strong relationships. So let me ask you today, how are you doing in terms of enjoying healthy relationships with other disciples of Christ. Here's a simple test you can try. Can you write down the names of a few people with whom you have a deep enough relationship such that you could call on them in your time of need, and they know that they could call on you in their time of need? If you can confidently write down some names, fantastic. Keep investing in those relationships. Make sure that those relationships are strong. Let them know how you're doing. Find out how they are doing. But perhaps you're not sure. Then I would put it to you that you need to make a decision today to start building some strong relationships. This is going to help you, and it will help them. A really helpful way of building strong relationships with other disciples is to become part of a small group. When we gather together with fellow disciples on a regular basis, we can far more easily build healthy relationships. Those gatherings are times when we get to share and to get more and more comfortable with sharing what's going on in our lives. And we learn to hear what's happening in their lives. Good relationships grow in those small groups. And when troubles come, these are often the obvious people to call. Let me share a quick testimony to illustrate. Many years ago, I was a part of a church in the northern suburbs of Durban, and a family from the southern suburbs joined the church. I asked them once why they traveled so far. It was a long drive. And they came on Sundays, they went to a small group meeting, they came to other gatherings. I asked them, why did they travel so far so often just to be part of this fellowship? Surely there were other great churches where they stayed. Sometime later, they had a major crisis. Their one child was close to death. At the hospital, I saw their small group gathered all around them. And in that moment, the one parent looked at me, remembered that question, pointed to the group and said, "This is why we travel." They had strong relationships. They had people who they knew they could call on in their time of need. They built that in the small group context. Such a helpful tool. It's not the only one, but it is such a helpful tool. Let me close with the first text that we read, Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either one of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Let's build some strong relationships with other disciples of Jesus. Let's make sure that we know who we can call in our time of need. Let's make sure that they know that they can call us in their time of need. And let's grow in our love for one another. We are stronger together.